Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 152 with Ramera Abraham. I had a great chat with Ramera and we talked about so many things, including her time at the Abbey Road Institute in London, building relationships at school. We talked about using emotional intelligence to get the most out of a vocal performance. And because she's a vocal producer, we really just get into all the weeds about vocals and how to make them shine. We talk about session prep, tuning vocals, mic choices, choosing a space for a vocal to live in. We also talk about common singing mistakes and how to fix them in the studio. And we also get into client acquisition, using the internet for self-promotion, mixing with her gut, having confidence, and so much more. So I really love this chat. I think you're going to love this conversation. So here's my conversation with Ramera Abraham coming up right here on Secret Sonics. Hey everyone. If you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Ramera Abraham. Ramera is a London-based vocal producer and recording engineer. Former guest of the show, Zvi Rodan, recommended I reach out to Ramera, who's graciously agreed to join me on the air. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Ramera.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. How are things going in London today?
Oh, gosh, things are great. It's the Platinum Jubilee weekend, so everybody is out on the streets, basically. Very busy.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to learn a bit more about you. We've just been schmoozing for like 10 minutes or whatever, but let's get the story. I'd love to hear about, how music became a thing for you and that how that kind of evolved into music production, all the things that you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, it's difficult trying to condense the last, I guess, six and a half years, which is about how long I've been in the industry in London specifically. But I started when I was in Canada and I was doing my bachelor's degree at Carleton University in Ottawa. And I was doing music and I was doing law as well. And it was just that typical thing of, I do want to work in the music industry. I am definitely a creative person. However, I might need something to fall back on that's a little bit more practical, hence the second major in law. But I actually came to London on holiday one summer after I had graduated from that program. And being a little bit of a Beatles fan or just an Abbey Road Studios fan in general, I went over to Abbey Road Studios and had to take my crosswalk photo. You know how it goes, and be a tourist.
Oh yeah,
basically.
I've done it. Oh
Yeah. We all do it. It's okay. Shameless.
You have to.
Yeah. And I kind of went into the gift shop as you do, and I saw that there was a leaflet for the Abbey Road Institute, and I kind of read up on the program, and it was a 1-year intensive course with a very small, concentrated group of people, like 15 to 20 students. Again, 1-year intensive program at Abbey Road Studios, and they had classrooms within and next to the building. There was a full recording studio that was for the students only, located in the basement of the studio. And I just thought, okay, music production and sound engineering, I have no idea what any of that entails. But based on the descriptions that were in this leaflet, it was enough to capture my attention and enough to get me interested in the subject. And, a few weeks went by and I, heavily considered applying, by which time, I'd asked my dad, Dad, what do you think about this? Should I apply? Should I go for this? And he, we talked about some of the options about me fully going into the creative side of the music industry. And, my dad is my barometer. He's my everything, basically. So I go to him for all sorts of advice. And he basically said, you'll be moving to another country by yourself. And it is something that I had done previously, but, you'll be moving to another country to pursue something, and you have to, give it 200%. If you don't have a plan B, this has to be it. And you can't just be mediocre. You have to really give it your all and, find your own way. Make sure that, do your research and make sure that this is something that you want to invest this is the career path for you. So I did. And then, I did apply thinking, if this doesn't fall through, I do have sort of a plan B with my music and law degree. I can, go work for an intellectual property firm that specializes in music publishing, stuff like that. But I applied and I got in, moved to London, and we fast forward 5.5 years, and here we are. But I remember sitting in that classroom with 15 other music production and engineering students and thinking, wow, like this is definitely the place for me. Everyone in my intake played at least 2 instruments or sang as well. And, we were all just so creative, with such an inclination for the things that production really entails. And my first job out of graduating from the Institute was a Spotify residency with Spotify Secret Genius, which is now called Notable, in partnership with Berklee College of Music. We had mentors from Berklee College of Music who were amazing. And, alongside that, myself and 2 other engineers who were selected for the project, one engineer based in New York and another in Nashville, got to work out of these, Spotify only dedicated studios. And the one that I was working at was located within Metropolis Studios in Chiswick in London. I think it's the biggest independent studio in Europe.
Wow.
Or it was. Or maybe it still is. I think it is. It was quite hands-off, the kind of engineering residency, in a good way, probably in the best way possible, in the sense that it was myself and the artist. And, I was with a lot of up-and-coming artists, a mix of independent artists that were coming into the Spotify space to write and record their own stuff. But also, they were throwing into the mix artists like JP Cooper and with producers like Mr. Hudson. And they were among the first few bigger artists I had the pleasure of working with. And a lot of the times, big or not, the artists would ask for feedback on their vocals, because a lot of the sessions that we would get coming through were vocal sessions. Once a song is written, you go in, you cut the vocal, all this. And, I'd be sitting there kind of behind Pro Tools thinking, you kind of held that last note on a little bit too long, but I think maybe we could go for a couple more takes. I was very kind of nervous to enter that field and give criticism in kind of a friendly way. But that is where I learned how to do that. And
such an important skill.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of how my love for vocal production evolved. And I started following and meeting these other vocal producers in the UK specifically, like Lorna Blackwood, Cameron Gower-Poole, Rafaela, Emanike, all of whom are just amazing producers and writers in their own right, and engineers. So, I kind of looked at what they were doing and what they were doing with their careers and tried to, and I still am trying to kind of shape mine in either a similar way, but also trying to incorporate things that might make me a little bit different. So that's kind of how my love for vocal production came about.
Amazing. I want to take it back a second. Did you have like a musical instrument? Like what was your background in music before kind of getting into the whole production thing? Yeah,
well, so I come from a very musical family. If you're not an Abraham if you're not musical, I think. But I grew up playing the piano. I did all my classical grades in piano, and I did voice as well. I did piano for about 15 years. Voice for 12 years and drums since I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And I still am a drummer, just the odd session drummer here and there. And my knowledge of music theory has come in very handy as an engineer as well.
For sure.
But that's kind of where all of that stemmed from. And, naturally from a young age, I started writing, experimenting with pop chords and trying to find my voice. Once I kind of figured out that, hey, I can sing and play. Maybe I can be the next Sarah Bareilles.
Yeah. Well, if you change courses, maybe that's still a possibility.
We'll see.
Amazing. So you're focused in. Well, actually, before we talk about being a vocal producer, yep. I like Abbey Road. Man, that must have been so crazy to go in there and like, because I was only outside of Abbey Road. I went with my sister who was living in London at the time, and I was like, psh. It's like a shrine, The Beatles for me, I'm sure, like you mentioned, the Beatle fanatic thing. Yeah. Same here. So for me, it's like that's like the I guess the altar of music.
Definitely, so yeah. And I mean, aside from the Beatles, there were so many amazing artists that have recorded there. Pink Floyd. I probably love Pink Floyd as much as I love the Beatles. So,
wow.
It was I guess it was a little bit part of the attraction to the course, but the longer I was on the course, the more I just really valued being with a small group of like-minded individuals, like the fellow producers and engineers that to this day, I would consider my closest friends. Like I trust them with my music and with my life. And they're some of my biggest collaborators now. And I'm still passing off some of my projects to them. And we're always collaborating still. So those relationships that have come out of the Institute are probably one of the most valuable things I took away.
Right. That seems to be like a big takeaway from like going to music school. It's like,
yeah,
it's more about the people you meet than the things that you learn, because you could kind of learn everything outside of school. But if you go to school, you have a chance to make, relationships that can help, propel your career forward. Because, making music in in a vacuum and in your man/woman cave is not a very conducive way to kind
expand
of like
your network. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Expand your network.
Yeah.
So music school seems to be a good way to do that, if anything. Did you get to record it all in like Studio B or anything like that?
Oh, well, we got to record we got to, in a very practical sense, the Institute allows you to kind of bring in bands or other artists, independent artists that we find, or we'd go to their gigs and say, hey, I'm a student and I have studio time that I can acquire if you want to record that song that we just heard you play, which is beautiful. Like I'm a producer, and it would be great to kind of meet up sometime and talk about maybe potentially recording your stuff. And it would be part of a bigger project. Obviously couldn't charge anything for these sessions, but it was all part of the greater learning experience. And that was probably the most valuable thing for me as well. Just being able to practically apply everything I'd learned and actually go into a studio, not Studio 1, 2, or 3 at Abbey Road, but, be in the building at least and share meals with them at the canteen and, just be amongst fellow music makers in that environment was so special. We did on the course get to sit in on sessions in Studio 1, which was an orchestral session, a big orchestral session, and Studio 2 as well, which was kind of a smaller classical session, like a piano and a quartet, for example. And then we'd have like a couple of pop band sessions in Studio 3.
All right. Sounds like a fun experience.
Definitely was.
Amazing. So now moving forward into kind of vocal production, what exactly is a vocal producer? How is that different than a regular producer? Or maybe how does that help you with other aspects of the production process? Maybe I've asked too many questions at once.
No, that's okay.
I think you get where I'm going.
That's all good. Hopefully I can answer all the questions in my one explanation.
Yes.
But a vocal producer is somebody who, in very vague terms, looks after the vocal performance, takes care of the vocal performance given by an artist. And that could be you could be a vocal producer and have an involvement as a vocal producer in many different forms. You could be doing the more mixing and technical side where you are, automating delays and reverbs on a vocal throughout a track to make it exciting. In addition to that, you could be a vocal producer by coming up with different vocal samples, chops, and loops with your own vocals, using creative manipulation of your voice to fill in any gaps in a track. Or you can be a vocal producer, and I think this might be, the broadest sense of the term, where you are there to kind of coach during a vocal performance.
Right.
In my experience, it would be kind of in a studio environment. But things like live performance, you might have someone that's just a dedicated vocal coach. But I would say a vocal producer is there to kind of capture the performance for the track in a studio setting. I do a lot of vocal arrangements when I'm vocal producing. I'm writing a lot of the background vocals. I'm writing ad libs. I am coaching the singer on how to maybe change their vowels slightly, or help them with little tips and tricks that might help get the take that I'm looking for. It's all about identifying a singer's strengths and weaknesses and really playing into those and having dedicated days to get your vocal right, and get it, being basically doing the track justice. And, I do little things like, because they are dedicated vocal days, we focus a lot on warm-ups, I print out lyric sheets, and I italicize phrases that are meant to be sung quite close to the microphone, quite intimately, I guess. I put lyrics in bold where they're meant to be, I don't know, in chest voice, for example, and kind of just being there along the way to identify, okay, here are the spots where maybe I think